Hello there, world of tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Burning Peak, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing how to make your tank more effective on the battlefield. Wargaming has massively changed how crew skills work in the game. If we take a look at an old video I posted, we can see my Object 260 had a 13 skilled crew on my commander, and not only that, had a 10 skilled crew on the driver, had a 9 skilled crew on the gunner. This is no longer possible. If we take a look at my WZ-111-5A, it is fully trained on crew skills. If I make my way over to the crew books, you can see I can no longer add any more. It says all crew members have trained all perks. You cannot do more than 6 perks. If you try to do any more, you will get this thing called post progression. Essentially, now, whenever I play this tank, any XP I earn will turn into crew books, which is actually really nice. It's so nice that Wargaming finally added this. It means that you can play whatever tank you want, and basically playing it will give you crew books, which will allow you to train other skills. This is massive. And I'll probably be making a video talking about why premiums are the biggest buff of them all for this buff. But yes, I would highly recommend to now start grinding any tier 10s you have, just so you can get these extra crew books. And not only that, but if you had, let's say for example, my Object 260, which, as we saw, had a 13 skilled crew on the commander. Well, all of those extra skills and everything went to crew books. So you can see I have 250,000 crew books now, which is huge. But it's nice. It is really nice. It means that basically Wargaming for once actually wasn't super greedy, lowered the amount of perks you can have, which gave you a bunch of XP, which means now you can equip other tanks that you're grinding, especially if you're a newer player. This is just really nice in general. So, pretty sweet stuff there. I'm also glad that there's only 6 crew skills that you can put on each vehicle. It makes it less confusing, and not only that, it makes it less pay to win almost, because my 13 skilled Object 260 was miles ahead of a player who had a 5 or 6 skilled crew, because I had everything trained. So it's actually quite nice that Wargaming has reworked the crew system. It's easier to grind now that you get extra crew books for playing your tanks that you've already got a fully trained crew on, and now that you can swap your crew members throughout tier 7, or not tier 7, tier 8, 9, and 10, whenever you want. It's just great. So good job on Wargaming there. With that aside, I'm going to be talking about how to use the new crew perks that have been added into the game properly, what you should be running on each of your tanks, and everything like that. So let's start off with our commander and make our way through. Now you'll notice that we have bonus perks on this tank, but that's not the case for every tank. If we make our way to something, let's say like a Type 5 Heavy, you can see we don't have bonus perks. And the reason why is because on your Type 5 Heavy, you have a radio operator. On your 5A, you don't. So you have bonus perks to make up for that. So technically your commander can have a 9 skilled crew, but it's not really. So let's take a look. Obviously, Brothers in Arms and repairs are absolutely mandatory. Because this is a heavy tank, we're not going to be running concealment. Concealment takes your camo from 8% to 14%. And it is nice, trust me. Having that extra boost to your concealment paired with recon is a big buff, but I think the other buffs are more important, and we're going to be running those instead. Recon, absolutely mandatory. Getting a 2% view range buff means that you are able to spot tanks further away, which is really important. And emergency is also absolutely important. It gives you a 5% crew efficiency bonus when you receive damage. You're in a heavy tank, you're going to be receiving damage, which means that basically every time you get shot, you get a 15% bonus to your overall efficiency. Basically another free Brothers in Arms. That is huge, and it boosts all your other crew skills as well. Now we have 2 final skills that we can train. I don't care about sound detection. I know that a lot of people do run sound detection, but personally, I don't care. Why? Because coordination is massive. When fully trained, increases aiming speed by 12.5% for 15 seconds after you spot an enemy tank. That is huge. It takes my aiming time from 2.29 to 1.99. And then we have practicality. This is also huge. Practicality allows you to get your repair kits and your med kits back faster. 10% faster. This is huge, especially because with your other crew perks buffed on, it's actually a big buff with Brothers in Arms and everything else. So I would recommend that this is what you're running for your heavies. It's a pretty nice bonus to your crew skills and practicality. I think this is super underrated by a lot of people. You'll see like skill 4-2's index showcasing instead of practicality SPG detection, but like I don't really care about the SPG detection. I run it on a lot of tanks, and honestly it's still very hard to know which way the shell's coming from. All the bonus does really is gives you a 10% less reduction in the in the effect it gives you. But I'd rather have a 10% cooldown bonus, because then I can use my repair kit anyway and get it back faster. So now we have bonus perks. And bonus perks, we're going to run Situational Awareness, 3% boost to our view range. View range is the most important thing in the game, so run view range. After view range, we have a couple different options. Side by Side increases crew efficiency bonus by 2.5% at distances of less than 50 meters from an allied vehicle of the same type. So that means if there's another allied heavy tank next to you, if you're in a heavy, you get a 2.5% bonus to your crew efficiency. It's nice, but Signal Interception is much better. Signal Interception gives you a 0.75% reduction in the amount of time your Sixth Sense activates. Sixth Sense is your spotting when you get spotted. So when you get spotted, a light bulb pops up. Some people don't know this, but that light bulb pops up 3 seconds after you've been spotted. So Sixth Sense getting 0.75% fat, or 0.75% seconds, is huge. It's absolutely huge. And with your other crew skills being buffed, it makes it even faster, which you'll see later. So with Signal Interception, it is 0.75 seconds base. The final one we're going to run is Firefighting. Yes, jamming is nice. It makes you get unspotted 1 second faster. But 1 second off of 10 seconds really isn't that big of a deal. I'd much rather have my tank get an 80% bonus to firefighting. When your tank gets lit on fire and you don't have a firefighting skill, you're literally going to want to kill yourself. So train firefighting. Trust me, it's worth it. Just like that, we now have our commander fully kitted out. Now we move over to Ron Hang, which is our gunner. Our gunner, we are going to run Brothers in Arms. We are going to run Repairs. Once again, we're not going to run Concealment. So that brings us to 4 extra perks. Snapshot is mandatory. 7.5% buff to on-movement dispersion. That means when you're turning your tank, it's going to bloom less. If you're not running it, it's going to bloom 7.5% more. So you need to run that. And again, it's a bigger buff because of the crew skills we're running. So it's actually 8.34, not 7.5. Also, quick aiming. Absolutely mandatory. This increases your aiming speed and turret traverse speed by 2.5%, which is huge. And the final one we want is Armorer. When fully trained, reduces the ranges of potential damage and potential penetration by 5%. This is the biggest thing you will ever run on your tank. In fact, I would recommend to train Armorer right after you've done Brothers in Arms and Repairs. Why? Essentially, the way this, penetration values work, if we take a look, it says, by default, potential damage and penetration ranges plus 25%, minus 25% from base values. For example, if a shell penetrates armor up to 100 millimeters and causes 100 HP of damage upon hitting a target, the actual penetration for the single shot may range from 75 mils to 125 mils. And the actual damage is the same, 75 to 125 HP. Decreasing this modifier will give more predictable shooting results. In other words, it does have a slight downside, I think. It says plus minus 5%. It says reduces the ranges of potential damage and potential penetration by plus 5 minus %. In other words, it takes the ranges of which your shell can roll from 25% to 20%. So yes, you can roll less high. Your highest roll goes from maybe 575 to like 555. But it also reduces a low roll, which means that you're more reliable. This is huge. Max rolls are nice and all, but trust me, I'd much rather not have min rolls on pens and on my shots in general. So it goes from 25% to 20%. So it means that your damage, let's say if you shot at a tank and you min roll with armor, instead of rolling 75 damage, now the minimum roll you can have is 80. That's huge. You need to run this, and it decreases gun dispersion by 1.5%. Now you have the final one, which concentration is nice, does give you decreases gun dispersion of a stationary vehicle by 3.5%. Useless. You're in a heavy, you're moving. Deadeye is what you want to run. This gives you a 3% boost to damage when shooting an enemy tank. Deadeye is really dangerous. It's not a damage boost, it's a damage boost to modules, which means you have a higher chance of ammo racking an enemy, lighting them on fire. It's a big buff. Run Deadeye. Now we arrive to Tong Dai, which is our driver. Brothers in Arms and Repairs once again. Now we have a bunch of other things we can run. Clutch braking is okay, but Smooth Ride is much better. This decreases gun dispersion by 4% on the move. Then we have Reliable Placement. When fully trained, increases HE shell damage absorption by 10%. It decreases damage received by falling from 30%. I don't care about the falling, but I do care about that HE absorption. This means that if an artillery shoots you, it's going to deal 10% less damage. It means that if any tank shoots at you, it's going to deal 10% less damage. That's huge. That means if a 4005 shooting at you, you literally take, instead of, 1500 damage, 1400 damage. That's a big buff. Run reliable placement. And that brings us to the final two perks. Engineer is huge. Engineer, when fully trained, increases top speed and reverse speed of your vehicle by 1. Now that doesn't sound huge until you realize that paired with a turbo, it basically means you can get like a 6-7 kilometer per hour speed boost. And especially that reverse speed, being able to go 16.16 in reverse right now is a huge buff. It's absolutely massive. So now you have two final perks that really you need to decide upon, which is off-road driving and controlled impact. Controlled impact gives you a couple big buffs. First of all, reduces ramming damage to your vehicle by 25% and to your suspension by 50%, and increases ramming damage you deal by 20. This is nice, but at the same time, it's really not that important, at least if you ask me. What's more important is off-road driving, because this reduces speed loss on moderately soft terrain by 5% and reduces speed loss on soft terrain by 100%. That's a huge buff. So yes, while ramming damage is nice, I don't feel there's many situations where you're going to have to worry about ramming people. So personally, I'm going to run off-road driving. I think that's better. And now we arrive to the final perks, which is on our gunner. Brothers in Arms, and repairs once again. Now, we are going to run Intuition. This is mandatory. You have to run Intuition on every tank. And you also have to run Safe Stowage on every tank. Because, why do you want to have your ammo rack possibly blown up? You need to run Safe Stowage. So that brings us to the final two perks, which, Perfect Charge is okay, gives you 10% shell velocity increase. Maybe if you're driving a Caliban, you'd think about that. But, Close Combat is huge. Decreases gun loading time by 2.5% at distances of less than 50 meters from the enemy. This is a heavy tank, and it means that if you're ever within 50 meters of an opponent, you're getting a big DPM buff. We can see my DPM goes from 2,800 to 2,884, so you need to run that. And then we also have ammo tuning. This is the biggest buff out of all. Train ammo tuning right after you've done repairs. Why? When fully trained, increases minimum potential damage by 2% and minimum potential penetration by 2%, meaning that your average damage goes from 490 to 496. So in other words, or not minimum potential, but the average damage. So in other words, you are increasing your damage per shot and you are reducing the min roll. So if you add the 2% from this to the also 5% from your armorer, and it's actually 5.8% because we have our Brothers in Arms trained, that's a huge buff. And it gets even better, because if we go to our garage, we're not running food, which gives you an additional 10% crew efficiency bonus. So if we put food on our tank, now we can take a look at these buffs, and we can see that they are quite substantial. It is a 6.35% buff to our potential penetration. That's huge. And not only that, it is also an additional 2.5% buff for our damage per shot. So we have 497 average damage per shot, and we have an additional 6% there. So if you add those together, 6.5-ish and 2.5, that's a 9% buff. So it means that if your shell was originally going to roll 75 damage, now it's going to roll 84. That's a huge buff. And it means that the 5A or any other tank you're running is going to be much more effective. And what's really funny is that technically, if you were to run something like Vents, this would increase these buffs even further on your vehicle. So we can just apply Vents really quickly to this tank. And now we can see that those buffs become now 6.78%. And as well 2.71%. So it is a big buff to your vehicle's overall average damage running Vents, and it could actually be worthwhile running it on your vehicle now due to these new buffs that your vehicle has. So overall, we have a lot of changes to the crew, and we can see how important it is to run these crew skills on your vehicle, increasing your average damage, making your dispersion better, and making your overall tank much better in general, increasing our cooldown time on consumables, which is huge. It's a 60-second cooldown, which is way faster than what it normally would be. So all these things paired together is super fantastic. And now we arrive to one other class of vehicle, which would be light tank. Tank destroyers, the only difference that I would run is I would have to take off one of the perks on each of these players, or should I say crew members, because you have to run concealment. But that's the same for a light. So basically, tank destroyers and light tanks are very similar. So if we make our way to a light tank, something that I don't have properly equipped, let's just go to the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen. We reset the crew skill on this guy, we reset the crew skill on this guy, and we reset the one on this guy. Now we can fully equip our Panzerwagen. So let's take a look at what we can do here. Brothers in Arms, and obviously we could do repairs. Now repairs is a bit 50-50. You could not run repairs, and yes, your tank will take longer to fix modules, but at the same time, you can run other perks. So let's see what we want to run here. For now, we'll put on repairs. We got to put on recon. These are all very important. Coordination, obviously, is important. You're in a light tank. You're going to be spotting people. So this is something you're going to need to run. Emergency, as I said, gives you that 5% bonus after receiving damage. But that might not be as important for a vehicle like this because of the fact that you're in a light. You're not going to be receiving as much damage. You need to run concealment. And practicality, once again, consumable cooldown time is pretty huge. So it really depends on what you want to run here. Do you want to run practicality? Do you want to run emergency? And personally, I think practicality is the way to go. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions. And it really is tricky. I'm personally going to keep it like this. While I do think that that 5% buff to your crew skills is nice, I also feel like repairs, being able to get your track back faster and everything like that. You know what, actually, we're going to do this. We're going to do emergency, and I'm not going to run repairs. The reason why is because I'm in a light tank. Maybe it's not as important to get that track repair speed, especially because of the fact we're going to be getting our repair kits back faster. So that's what we're going to do there. You could kill me. You could say flame me in the comments. That's a bad idea. That's what I'm going to be going with. Situational awareness is mandatory. Signal interception is mandatory. And then we arrive to the other ones. So communications expert. When fully trained, increases crew efficiency bonus by 2.5% if the amount of damage you assist exceeds your vehicle's initial hit points. For the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, you have to assist 1,600 damage, which is not really that much to get a 2.5% buff. But it is only a 2.5% buff, which isn't that important. But it is forever. But you also could run firefighting, which is obviously pretty important as well. So there's a lot of different buffs that you can run here. You need to run signal interception, though. So the question is, would you rather run firefighting or communications expert? I'm going to say communications expert, just because of the fact you get that buff. It's a permanent 2.5%. You shouldn't be getting shot too much in your light, so I don't feel it's as important to run firefighting. Making our way down to the next, we are going to run Brothers in Arms, and again, now we can take a look at the other abilities. We need to run Snapshot, is absolutely important. We need to run Concealment, it's a light tank. We need to run Quick Aiming, we need to run Armor, which leaves one last ability. Now this one, you could run your Suspension Repair Time. I don't think running repairs on your first guy is that important, but running repairs on your next still does take your suspension repair time down a big amount from 7.29 to 3 seconds. So we are going to run repairs on our second crew skill. It's not that important to run it on every single player, if you ask me. Bonus perks, we have obviously quite a bit here. So what are we going to do? Perfect Charge, again, pretty useless. But ammo tuning is huge. Would definitely recommend to run that. And what else do we have? Safe Stowage is obviously nice, but we are going to run Intuition to get that big old boost there. And now we have Close Combat, which within 50 meters of your opponent gives you a DPM boost. This is kind of useless for a light. I mean, yes, it might help you in some situations, but I feel like overall it's really not that important. So we're going to be running Safe Stowage. I feel like Close Combat, it's nice and all, but again, I don't really see it as that much of a buff. So that brings us to the final player in our tank, which is our driver. Driver, we are going to run Brothers in Arms. Again, we are going to run our suspension repair speed, which gives us a big ol' boost. And in total, it makes our suspension repair 1.74 seconds faster, which is quite nice. Then we are going to run Concealment, and let's see what else we can run here. Well, we're going to do Smooth Ride, which gives us better on movement dispersion. We are also going to run the HE damage reduction because you need to, and that brings us to the final one, which is Engineer. Again, a better reverse speed, a better top speed, which means that if you're running field mods that slow your tank down or anything else like that, it's going to make your vehicle just that little bit more reliable. So we have gotten our repair speed down a little bit faster, 3 seconds. It's not huge, but I do feel like we need to run all these things up here, and we've still reduced our repair speed overall. Now we can make our way over to food. Oh, we already have food on it. So we technically have the vehicle fully equipped. We can see how with a light tank, you have to run a different loadout than you do with a heavy tank. And the reason why is because repairs is very important on a heavy and camo isn't. But on a light, you have to run camo. It's just mandatory. So I just feel like repairs aren't as important, so I'm not running repairs as much. It's a 67% buff instead of an 80% buff. It's not a huge difference if you're only running it on 2 members. And you won't see this from many YouTubers, but I think that it's actually a pretty easy way to do it. So I guess we will finish off with a tank destroyer because tank destroyers are also very different on the way that you run them. So, yeah, let's do, is there a tank destroyer with less crew members so it's a little easier to equip, or one that I haven't already equipped? Bruh, I've equipped a lot of them. I'm not going to do the 183. Here we go. The Foch is a bit better off. So let's go to our Foch. Let's reset all of our perks here. 1 and done. 2 and done. Also, right now, for the next 12 days, you can reset your perks for free, which is pretty nice. It's actually pretty sweet that you can do that. So we have our vehicle fully reset. So, once again, Brothers in Arms and Concealment. Super duper important. Now we arrive to Recon, which is very important for your tank destroyers. Coordination, which is also very important. And we're going to run Emergency because you are going to be shot at. And that finishes off with Practicality once again. We're going to do the exact same thing that I did with my other vehicles here, which is we're going to run repairs, but only on the other crew skills. Now, maybe running something like a Jagdpanzer E100, yeah, it's a lot more important to have your track repair. But I don't know. I still feel like it's super important to run one less repair kit and, you know, all these other buffs because they're so much better. So we're going to run Situational Awareness, which gives you a 3% view range buff. We're going to run Signal Interception, and then we're going to run Firefighting because you kind of have to run Firefighting on most tanks. The only ones that I don't run it on are Lights because of the fact light tanks have that assistance boost. Now we arrive over to your Gunner, and the Gunner, Brothers in Arms. We're going to run repairs, obviously, to make that faster, and we're going to run concealment. Snapshot is absolutely huge. Quick aiming is absolutely huge, and armorer. We are obviously just doing the same thing as before, so that is fully trained. We arrive over to our driver, Brothers in Arms, repairs, concealment. Now we are going to have a tricky one here. Obviously, again, HE shell absorption is mandatory. Reverse speed is mandatory. So now that brings us to the final one. Would I rather have better traverse speed by 5% or smooth ride? Personally, I'd rather have better gun dispersion when firing on the move. So that is exactly what we're going to be running. And we arrive to the final crew member, which we are going to run Brothers on, repairs, and concealment, bringing us to the final abilities. Obviously, again, we want that extra damage per shot. We are also not going to worry as much about intuition on this vehicle right now. We're going to run, this is tricky. Well, tank destroyers, at least one like the Foch, you're probably not going to need that 2.5% better gun loading time. Like, yes, it does give you more DPM, but really, it's a second off your reload there. So not too important. Intuition's going to give you a much bigger buff there. So what we're going to run is safe stowage, and we're going to run intuition. That's what we're going to do for this vehicle. That way we can change our clip, whether we need to load gold or whatever faster, and everything else is properly equipped. So that is our tank destroyer. We can see that with repairs on all of these other vehicles, it still gives us an 83% buffed to our repair speed. So it's still a big buff. Yes, running one more repair would give us a big buff. It would go from 4.72 to 4.16, but really, it's not that big of a change. I don't think it's that big of a deal to just run one less repair. It's like not that big of a deal if you ask me, but you can let me know in the comments what you guys think. Either way, that's how I would equip all classes of vehicles. Mediums are similar to light tanks, so do what you will with that information. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye!